7-year-old Amara Coleman had been completely blind since birth, born with a rare condition called Leber congenital amaurosis. And on the day she walked onto the Family Feud stage holding her father's hand, she carried something in her jacket pocket that nobody, not even her own father, knew she'd brought. Her family had driven 9 hours from a small town outside Knoxville, Tennessee, scraping together gas money after Amara's father Darnell lost his warehouse job 3 months earlier, when the facility automated half its positions. They needed the prize money badly. Rent was 2 months behind, and Amara's specialized cane and mobility training weren't covered by the state assistance they qualified for. But when Steve Harvey knelt down to greet her, the way he does with every young child on the show, Amara reached into her pocket, pulled out a small folded piece of paper covered in raised braille dots, and said 7 words that made Steve go completely still on live television. "I made this so you could see." The morning of the taping had unfolded like any other. Steve arrived early, running through his usual pre-show routine, cracking jokes with the crew about the unseasonably cold October morning. Backstage, the Coleman family waited alongside their competitors. The Whitfield family from South Carolina, a boisterous group of 5 siblings who'd been rehearsing fast money strategies in the green room for an hour. Darnell sat beside Amara, who wore small round sunglasses and kept one hand resting lightly on her white cane even while seated, a habit her mobility instructor had taught her for spatial awareness. Her mother, Renee, worked as a home health aide and couldn't get the day off, so it was just Darnell and Amara making the trip, sleeping in their car at a rest stop halfway through the drive to save on a hotel. Steve did his usual pre-show banter, complimenting Amara's sunglasses, getting a shy giggle out of her, unaware of what she'd carried onto that stage. But nobody in that studio knew what was coming. Darnell had lost his job at the regional distribution center in July, laid off along with 63 other workers when the company brought in automated sorting equipment. He'd worked there for 9 years. The severance package covered exactly 1 month of expenses. He applied for unemployment, approved after a 3-week delay that put them a full rent cycle behind before the first check arrived. He applied for every warehouse and logistics job within an hour's drive. 41 applications in 10 weeks. 3 interviews, 0 offers, most positions requiring commercial driving certifications he didn't have the money or time to obtain, while also managing Amara's care. Amara's blindness required specific supports that weren't optional. Her school district provided a paraprofessional aide for 4 hours a day, but Darnell and Renee covered the additional mobility training and updated equipment out of pocket, since the state Medicaid waiver program they'd applied for had a wait list that stretched past 2 years. Amara's current cane, the one she carried onto the Family Feud stage, was a hand-me-down from another blind student 2 sizes too tall for her, purchased second-hand because the properly fitted model cost $380 that the family simply didn't have. Darnell had applied for an assistance grant through a regional blindness services nonprofit. Denied, citing insufficient documentation, though he'd submitted every form the intake coordinator had originally requested. He resubmitted with updated medical records, a full evaluation from Amara's ophthalmologist, and a letter from her mobility instructor documenting the specific safety risk of using an ill-fitting cane. Denied again, citing a funding freeze for the fiscal year that the nonprofit's own website hadn't yet updated to reflect, meaning Darnell had spent 2 weeks gathering paperwork for a program that was, unbeknownst to him, already closed. A caseworker suggested a third avenue, a manufacturer's donation program that partnered with select nonprofits nationwide. Denied because Amara's specific model wasn't part of the current donation cycle, with the next cycle not opening applications for another 8 months. Every door that should have opened for a blind 7-year-old instead came back marked with a different bureaucratic reason to wait. each rejection letter using slightly different language for what amounted to the same answer. Darnell kept every rejection letter in a manila folder in the glove compartment of his car, a habit he couldn't fully explain even to himself, except that some part of him needed proof, if anyone ever asked, that he had tried everything a father could try. What nobody outside their small apartment could see was how much Darnell was hiding behind his own composure. He told his mother on the phone every Sunday that things were getting there, slowly. He told Amara's teacher he was working on a few leads. He told Amara every night when she asked if they were going to be okay, "We're fine, baby girl. Daddy's got it handled." He did not have it handled. He was skipping breakfast most days so Amara could have a full lunch packed for school, had lost 14 pounds since the layoff, and had started parking 3 blocks from wherever he went so nobody would notice the check engine light that had been on for 2 months because he couldn't afford the repair. He'd started picking up occasional day labor shifts through a temp agency, work that paid cash but offered no consistency. Some weeks bringing in $400 and others bringing in nothing at all, a rhythm that made budgeting for anything beyond the absolute basics nearly impossible. Renee, working double shifts as a home health aide most weeks, carried her own version of the same exhaustion, coming home some nights too tired to do more than kiss Amara goodnight before falling asleep in her clothes. The two of them had developed an unspoken system of trading off who got to actually rest on any given night, though in practice neither of them seemed to get the good end of that trade very often. Amara, for her part, understood more than her father realized. Blind since birth, she developed an acute sensitivity to sound and tone that most sighted children never need. She could hear the specific strain in her father's voice on nights he thought she was already asleep, the particular quiet that settled over their apartment after he thought he'd tucked her in. One evening, about 6 weeks before the taping, Amara had asked her father, completely out of nowhere, "Daddy, are you sad because of me?" Darnell had to step into the bathroom and run the tap so she wouldn't hear him break down. But nobody in that apartment that night knew that question would resurface, transformed into something else entirely, in front of a national television audience 2 months later. The specific reason Darnell applied for Family Feud was almost accidental. A caseworker at the Blindness Services nonprofit mentioned offhand that a producer had reached out asking if they knew any families who might make compelling contestants. Families facing real hardship. Darnell filled out the application that same night, mentioning Amara's blindness and their recent job loss in a single paragraph, expecting nothing. The callback came within a week. He almost said no, worried about the 9-hour drive and what it would cost in gas, but Amara, overhearing the phone call, had asked to go, saying simply, "I want to meet him. I want to give him my present." Darnell had no idea what she meant. She'd been working on something in her room for weeks with her braille slate, refusing to tell him what it was. The taping moved through its rounds with the usual energy, the Whitfield family full of loud enthusiasm, the Coleman family quieter, but clearly beloved by the crowd for Amara's easy warmth. Steve made a point, as he often does, of crouching down to talk with Amara between rounds, asking her what her favorite subject in school was. She said reading, specifically Braille books about space, and that she wanted to be an astronomer one day, which got a genuine laugh of delight from Steve and the crowd both. Nobody in that studio knew Amara was waiting for exactly this kind of pause to do what she'd been planning the entire drive up. During a break while the board reset for fast money, Amara reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the folded paper she'd been carrying all day. She held it out toward the sound of Steve's voice with both hands. "Mr. Steve," she said, "I made you something. Can I give it to you?" Steve knelt down immediately, the way he had at the start of the day, and took the paper gently. He unfolded it and saw rows of small raised dots across the page, Braille characters he couldn't read himself. "What does it say, sweetheart?" he asked. Amara reached out and found his hand, then guided his fingers across the dots, one row at a time, translating as she went. I wrote, "I can't see with my eyes, but I see with my heart. I made this so you could see what I see when I think about you being nice to my daddy." And then she added the 7 words that stopped the room cold. "I made this so you could see." The studio fell completely silent. Steve, still kneeling, went entirely still, his eyes locked on the paper in his hands, even though he couldn't read a single character on it. His smile disappeared, and for several seconds he didn't move at all, didn't speak. The silence stretching long enough that a producer in the wings actually mouthed, "Is he okay?" to another crew member. 300 people in that audience sat in a hush unlike anything from earlier in the taping. The kind of silence where you could hear the HVAC system humming overhead. Darnell, watching from the family podium, put both hands over his face, his shoulders beginning to shake. Steve stayed on his knees. He pressed the folded paper against his chest for a moment, then looked toward Darnell, his voice barely above a whisper when he finally spoke, though the mic caught it perfectly. "In 45 years of doing this job," he said, "nobody has ever given me anything like this." He stood slowly, walked a few paces away, and had to turn away from the cameras entirely, something he rarely allows himself to do on air. When he turned back, his eyes were openly wet, and he made no attempt to hide it. But Steve wasn't done. He turned to his stage manager and said the words that would end up in every recap of the episode. "Cut the cameras? No. Leave them rolling, I don't care. We're stopping the show right now. This has never happened in 45 years, and I'm not moving past it." A producer near the control booth signaled frantically for a commercial break, and Steve waved him off without breaking his focus on the Coleman family. "No network approval on this one," he said. "This is me, Steve Harvey, and this is happening." He walked back over to Darnell and knelt down in front of him this time, still holding Amara's braille note in one hand. "Let me tell you something," Steve said, his voice thick. "I know what it is to hide how bad things are from the people counting on you. I wrote a goodbye letter to my family once, back when I was at the very bottom, ready to mail it because I couldn't see any way through. I never sent it. But I remember exactly what it feels like to smile at your child while you're falling apart inside, because you think that's what being a good father means." He looked directly at Darnell. "It's not. Being a good father means letting somebody help you carry it. So let me help you carry it." Steve wasn't finished. He pulled out his phone right there on the stage, dialing a number from memory, something no host does mid-taping. It was the director of a national organization providing mobility equipment and technology for blind children. "I need a full, properly fitted mobility kit for a 7-year-old named Amara Coleman," he said into the phone, loud enough for the front rows to hear every word. "Cane, GPS navigation device, braille technology, all of it, delivered to her home in Tennessee by the end of this week. And I want her family connected with a housing assistance advocate today, not next month." He hung up before waiting for a reply, already certain of the answer. He turned to face the cameras directly. "I want to talk to everybody watching at home," he said. "A little girl who has never seen a single thing in her entire life just made something with her hands so that I, a grown man with 2 working eyes, could understand what she sees when she looks at kindness. That's not something television teaches you. That's something you learn from a child who sees the world better than most of us ever will." Darnell was crying openly now, and dozens in the audience were doing the same without any embarrassment. And then he did something no one expected, even his own producers. He announced that both families on stage, the Colemans and the Whitfields, would split the full fast money prize regardless of outcome. The Whitfield family didn't hesitate for a moment. Their oldest sibling crossed the stage and knelt down in front of Amara, telling her that her note was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Though Amara, of course, couldn't see the tears on the woman's face, only heard the tremor in her voice, which she said afterward was somehow even more powerful. 3 months after the taping, Amara received her new mobility kit, custom fitted, and Darnell started a new position with a logistics company that Steve's foundation had connected him with directly. One that offered on-site training and a schedule flexible enough to manage Amara's appointments. He said in a later interview that the position wasn't just financially stabilizing, but restored something he hadn't realized he'd lost. A sense that he was still someone capable of providing, not just surviving day to day on temp shifts and denied applications. When the episode aired 7 weeks after taping, it crossed 240 million views across platforms within the first 2 weeks. And the hashtag #ISeeWithMyHeart trended for 8 straight days, eventually inspiring several blindness advocacy organizations to share it as an educational resource for teaching sighted children about empathy and perception. A year after the taping, the family had moved into stable housing, current on every bill for the first time in over a year, and Renee had cut back to a single job for the first time since Amara's diagnosis, finally able to be home most evenings. Today, the Amara Coleman Foundation, funded initially through Steve's own organization and named using Amara's own words as its motto, "I see with my heart," has provided mobility equipment and technology to over 890 blind and visually impaired children nationwide, and to date has raised $14 million toward that mission, with a growing program specifically pairing newly diagnosed families with parents like Darnell and Renee, who understand the particular exhaustion of navigating a system built without much patience for families already stretched thin. Amara still keeps a copy of the original Braille note she gave Steve, recreated by her teachers since the original stayed framed in Steve's office. In a later interview, Steve said that note remains the single object he's kept from any taping in 45 years of television. "She couldn't see me," he said, "but she saw exactly who I needed to be. That's a gift I don't think I'll ever fully deserve, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to." Darnell still sends updates to Steve's team every few months, and Amara, now studying astronomy books in Braille with a new telescope adapted for audio description, still asks her father sometimes if Mr. Steve can see the stars with his heart too. Her teacher reports that Amara has become something of a small celebrity among her classmates, several of whom asked to learn a few Braille characters themselves after seeing the clip. A ripple of curiosity, Darnell says, has done more for Amara's confidence than almost anything else that year. What Amara taught a stunned studio and millions of viewers afterward wasn't really about blindness or hardship at all. It was the reminder that sight and understanding are not the same thing, and that sometimes the people who cannot see the world at all are the ones who understand it, and each other, most clearly. If this story about a blind girl's gift to Steve Harvey moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to know that true kindness can be seen even without eyes. Have you ever been shown love in a way you never expected? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more moments that restore your faith in humanity.